Imagine fighting for freedom, only to return to a land where you're still considered second class. That's what millions of Africans experienced during World War I. They weren't just soldiers, they were pawns in a European war. And their story explains why African nationalism began to rise in the 20th century. When war broke out in 1914, European powers turned to their colonies for soldiers and laborers. From Senegal to Cameroon, from Nigeria to Kenya, men were conscripted to fight in Europe, the Middle East, and in East Africa. They carried rifles, dug trenches, and endured the harshest of conditions, often for pay so low it could barely be considered survival. Yet they fought. They fought. Why did they fight? Because loyalty, duty, and fear compelled them. Why did they fight? Because they believed they were fighting for something greater than them. They believed they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. Or so they hoped. African soldiers faced the harshest of conditions, from frostbites in Europe to malaria in East Africa, poison gas, trench warfare. Casualties were enormous, supplies were scarce, and recognition, they were barely recognized for all their hard work and labor and fighting. And yet they showed resilience, courage, and ingenuity. They built roads, carried artillery, and fought battles that decided the fate of empires. For years, Africans bled and suffered for a war that wasn't theirs. The war wasn't theirs, yet they fought. When the war ended in 1918, these soldiers returned home expecting gratitude, or at least respect. If you don't get gratitude, at least let us be respected. Instead, they were met with the same colonial hierarchies. The same colonial hierarchies they fought to preserve. No political power, no recognition, no real reward. So they just fought and came back to experience the same thing. And you see, that injustice, it planted a seed. It gave them a realization. If the world doesn't value African lives abroad, why should it back home? This was the psychological spark of the African awakening. African soldiers in World War I taught the whole continent a harsh truth. Freedom abroad does not guarantee freedom at home. And so nationalism, anti-colonial thoughts, Pan-Africanism started to take root. They fought not just for Europe, but for a vision of Africa that could never be ignored again. Africa gave blood to a world that denied it. And that sacrifice lit the fire for the continent's next fight, independence. Millions of African soldiers fought in World War I. They endured Europe's harsh conditions and East Africa's forests, only to return home and be denied recognition. Their sacrifice sparked the rise of African nationalism. But you see, that spirit is all but gone right now, and we need to bring that back. We need to remind people why this thing was fought for, why independence was fought for. We may mouth Pan-Africanism or African nationalism, but we don't put in the fight. I hope we can do something about this, guys. I really do hope so. Until next time.